All right, let's dive in today, and we're going to be looking at CEAT Ltd's Q3 FY25 performance. We've got right here their financial report and the investor presentation. And we're going to break it all down, all the important stuff, so that you can walk away knowing exactly how they're doing.
It's really an interesting case study. What jumps out to me right away is that CE, it's not just your typical tire company. They're actually part of RPG Group. And RPG has its hands in so many different things, infrastructure, technology, even life sciences. So that gives CE a really unique kind of foundation and perspective, I think.
Yeah, okay, so let's actually get into like the details of their Q3 performance. The first thing I see that's pretty significant is their consolidated revenue of ours. 3,299.9 crore. It's a pretty big 11.4% increase year over year.
Yeah, that's really impressive growth, and I think it really speaks to the strong demand that's out there for their products. But it's important to look beyond just the top line numbers. We got to also look at their profitability, right? And
Yeah.
that's where this EBITDA margin comes in. They reported a margin of 10.5%, which reflects, how efficient they are operationally.
Yeah, and I remember reading about how rising raw material costs have been a big challenge for them. So how does that, I guess, how does that EBITDA margin kind of shed light on how well they've been managing costs in light of those rising costs?
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The rising costs of raw materials, things like rubber and carbon black, that's a major concern across the entire industry. But what's really interesting is that despite this pressure, CEAT has still managed to maintain a pretty healthy EBITDA margin. So what this tells me is that they've been really smart about controlling their costs in other areas of the business. Maybe they've streamlined their manufacturing process or negotiated better prices with suppliers. I think it shows how adaptable they are, especially with this, constantly changing market.
Yeah, it sounds like they're walking a fine line there, trying to, keep up the profitability, but also stay competitive in this market where, like you said, everybody's feeling those rising costs.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a real balancing act. And their pricing strategy is important too, right? They've had to increase prices for some of their categories, to offset some of those input cost increases. But at the same time, they can't go too high or they'll price themselves out of the market.
Makes you wonder how everybody else is responding to this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be a real juggling act for everyone.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, let's maybe we can shift gears a little bit here and talk about like what's actually driving CEE's growth, right? The report highlights a couple things. One is how well they've done in the replacement tire segment, and also how their international business is bouncing back. Those are two of the big
That
factors.
made sense, right? I mean, people are always going to need new tires,
Yeah.
even when the economy is a little uncertain. But I'm curious about their international operations. What markets are they really focusing on?
Well, they've got a presence in over 110 countries, which is pretty impressive. It's global, So this diversification helps them spread the risk a little bit and
Yeah.
take advantage of all these different opportunities that pop up in different regions. They've been
Mhm.
really strategic, about expanding into new markets while also making their existing positions even stronger. It's a smart way to navigate, how complex the global economy can be.
Yeah, we hear a lot about companies struggling to, do well internationally. What do you think is like the secret sauce to CEA's success?
I'd say it's probably a combination of a lot of things. They've clearly done their homework, figuring out the specific needs and preferences of each market. And they're also using, their expertise in technology and their reputation for making quality products to really stand out. It's a crowded market out there, so you got to do something to differentiate yourself, right?
Right, yeah. So we see a company here with a diverse portfolio, some really impressive revenue growth, and a really strategic approach to navigating this complex global market. But what about, the bottom line? What is their net profit of ours, 97 crore? What does that mean for investors?
Well, you have to, think about that number while remembering all this stuff about rising input costs. A profit's always good, obviously, but you got to remember that their net profit was affected by those rising costs. So what that means is that their profitability could actually been even higher if those external pressures weren't there.
Right. It's a good reminder that the numbers don't always tell the whole story. You got to kind of understand what's going on underneath, what all the factors are. And speaking of which, their capital expenditure this quarter was RS 283 crore. That's a big investment. What's the story there?
Well, I think it shows how committed they are to growth, that they're confident about the future. And the fact that they funded this entire expenditure through internal accruals is a big deal. Basically, they didn't have to borrow any money, which, you know, shows how well they're managing their finances.
Now, for those listening who might not know what internal accruals means, could you maybe break that down a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Internal accruals, that's basically the profits that a company keeps, from its own operations. So in C8's case, what they're doing is they're reinvesting their earnings to fuel future growth. This way, they don't have to rely so much on debt, and it makes them more financially stable. It tells me that they're making enough cash flow to, support these expansion plans without having to take on more risk, financial risk.
It's like they're playing the long game, right? Building a solid foundation so that they can, grow sustainably. Now, I really want to know what they're actually spending all this money on. Maybe we could look at the investor presentation and get some clues.
Yeah, let's take a look. The investor presentation usually gives you those finer details, the stuff that really helps you understand their priorities. We can get a much clearer picture.
Okay, great.
Lots of good stuff in here. What caught your eye?
Well, there's this Road to Siberia campaign. I don't know. It just sounds so mysterious, like some secret mission or something.
Yeah, it definitely makes you curious. They don't really go into detail about it in the presentation, but if you think about some of CE8's past marketing campaigns, they've always been really creative, really good at tailoring their message to different groups of customers.
Yeah, Siberia, it makes me think of adventure, like really rugged, pushing the limits. Maybe it's for like a new line of winter tires.
Could be, yeah. I mean, Siberia is known for its crazy weather, right?
Yeah.
And CE8 does operate in countries where, winter tires are a must-have. But it could also be like a metaphor. Maybe it's about how they're always innovating, always pushing the boundaries of tire technology.
Maybe they're sponsoring an expedition, testing their tires in like
Yeah.
the toughest conditions. That would definitely get people talking and it would show how durable their tires are.
Right, exactly. Leaving it kind of vague, this whole Road to Siberia thing, it's actually pretty smart marketing. Makes people want to know more, keeps the brand on their mind.
Okay, so moving on. I saw they got a bunch of awards and recognition. One that stood out to me was this 0 ppm achievement. What is that exactly?
So 0 ppm stands for 0 parts per million. Basically, it means they have a perfect record when it comes to quality, like no defects at all. It's pretty amazing, especially in manufacturing. Even tiny imperfections can make a big difference.
So they're saying they haven't had a single bad tire slip through. That's incredible. I mean, it shows how dedicated they are to quality.
It really does. And Daimler, they're a global leader in the auto industry. The fact that they recognize CEAT for this achievement, it says a lot about their manufacturing and how reliable they are as a supplier. They're not just meeting the standards, they're setting a whole new bar.
That's awesome. There was also this India Design Mark Award for their Winergy X3R tire. I'm no tire expert, but that sounds pretty high tech.
It is. The Indie Design Mark, that's all about recognizing great product design and innovation. So this Minergy X3R, I guess it's probably designed to be fuel efficient and high performing. People are really looking for eco-friendly and sustainable transportation options these days.
Right, yeah. Consumers care about the environment, so tire manufacturers have to adapt.
Exactly. And it looks like CEAT is definitely on board with that. It's not just about the product design either. There are ESG initiatives, the presentation talks about those too, and those cover a lot of different areas.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. What are like some of their key ESG initiatives and how do they fit into, their overall strategy?
Well, one big thing is they've committed to these science-based net zero emissions targets. So they're serious about reducing their environmental impact, and they're investing in renewable energy to power their operations. Then, on the social side, they've got all these community initiatives going on, like renovating libraries, giving clean cook stoves to families who need them, and helping women get job skills through training programs.
That's great. They're really taking this holistic approach, thinking about their own operations, but also how they impact the community.
Right. They're not just talking about ESG, they're actually living it, making it part of everything they do.
Yeah.
It's a long-term plan to create value for everybody, the shareholders, society, the environment,
That's
everyone.
It's a good look, right? Shows they're a responsible company, and that matters to investors and consumers. Now, there were also some forward-looking statements from CE's MD and CEO, Mr. Arnab Banerjee. What did he have to say?
He basically said he's cautiously optimistic about future growth, which, makes sense given all the uncertainty in the global economy right now.
Right. Earlier, we talked about how those rising raw material costs impacted their Q3 performance.
Yeah.
What are they thinking is going to happen with those costs?
Mr. Banerjee thinks they're going to stay pretty flat in Q4. If that happens, it would give them some breathing room, maybe help them maintain or even improve their margins.
That would be good news, not just for CEA, but for the whole industry. But, global markets can be unpredictable. Are there other things that could, you know, affect their performance in the next few quarters?
Of course. The global economic outlook, it's still a bit shaky, and there's always the risk of geopolitical issues and supply chain disruptions. But CE, it's got a good track record. They've got a diverse portfolio, and they're smart about managing costs. So I think they're in a good position to handle whatever challenges come their way.
Okay, that's good to hear. Now, one more thing from the presentation really caught my eye. It's this lighthouse designation for Industry 4.0 technologies. That sounds, I don't know, super futuristic and really impressive.
It is, yeah. The World Economic Forum gives out that designation. It's basically for companies that are leading the way and using these Industry 4.0 technologies, in their manufacturing processes.
For those of us who aren't, super tech savvy, what exactly is Industry 4.0? What kind of technologies are we talking about here?
It's a whole range of advanced technologies like artificial intelligence, big data analytics, the Internet of Things, advanced automation. It's really revolutionizing manufacturing, making it more efficient, more flexible, more responsive.
So it's not just about robots building things, right?
Yeah. It's about creating this connected, intelligent system where machines can talk to each other, analyze data instantly, and optimize everything to be as efficient as possible. Imagine, a tire factory where the equipment has sensors that can actually predict when it needs maintenance,
Yeah.
before anything breaks down, so there's less downtime and things run smoothly.
Wow, that's incredible. But how does this affect the tires themselves? Like, how does Industry 4.0 change the actual product?
That's where it gets really cool. You can actually embed these Industry 4.0 technologies into the tires, so they become these smart data gathering devices. Imagine a tire with sensors that monitor road conditions, tire pressure, wear and tear, all that stuff. That data can be used to make the tires perform better, make them safer, even give drivers personalized recommendations based on how they drive.
So it's not just that the tires are built differently, it's
Yeah.
that they're constantly learning and adapting.
Right.
That's a whole new ballgame.
It is. This is the future of mobility. These smart tires, they can make drivers safer, they can help save fuel, they can even contribute to how self-driving cars work.
Wow, that's exciting. But let's bring it back to our listener for a second. Why should they care about all these fancy tire technologies?
Because at the end of the day, all this innovation means real benefits for everyday drivers. Imagine tires that last longer, perform better in any weather, tell you if there's a problem before it becomes a big issue, and even help you be more eco-friendly.
So CEAT, they're not just riding the waves of this technological revolution, they're leading it. Their commitment to Industry 4.0 is about making driving better for everyone.
Exactly.
Now, we've covered a lot today, from CEAT's financials to their strategies, their commitment to sustainability and technology. What's your overall assessment of where they stand in the market?
I think they've shown they can be resilient even when the economy is tough. They're growing, they're managing costs well, and they're committed to innovation. Their focus on ESG and Industry 4.0 tells me they're thinking ahead, which is a good sign for their future. They're not just keeping up, they're shaping the industry.
That's great. And to our listeners, you've now got a much better understanding of CEAT's Q3 performance, the challenges they face, what they're aiming for, and how they're contributing to the future of the tire industry.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how all this technology, it's not just changing how tires are made, it's changing how we use them, how we
Yeah.
drive.
It really is. Yeah, it's a huge shift. Tires used to be just, a passive part of the car, but now they're becoming like active participants. They're smart.
That's a great way to put it. It makes you wonder, what else could happen? How else could all this technology change the tire industry, maybe even the whole automotive industry? Oh, there are so many possibilities. I mean, imagine self-healing tires, right? Tires that can fix themselves if they get a small puncture. It would be so much safer and more convenient. Or tires that can change their pressure and tread pattern, depending on the road conditions. So they always have the best grip and the best fuel efficiency.
That sounds like science fiction, but it could actually happen with all this new technology.
Mhm.
And, as electric cars become more popular, I bet these smart tires are going to be even more important.
Absolutely, yeah. Electric cars, they put different demands on tires, because they're heavier and they have all that instant torque. Smart tires can help with that. They can make the car go farther on a charge. They can reduce rolling resistance, even help with regenerative braking.
So this lighthouse designation, it's not just an award for CEAT. It's a sign that they're leading this whole revolution, and it's going to affect all of us eventually.
Right, it shows they're not just following the trends, they're setting them.
As we wrap up our deep dive today, it feels like we've just scratched the surface. We talked about their financials, their strategies, sustainability, technology, but there's always more to learn.
That's what's so great about a deep dive, right? It makes you want to learn more, to dig deeper. We've given our listeners a good overview of CEAT, but now it's up to them to keep exploring, the things that really interested them.
Exactly. So to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive, and we hope you learned something new. You've got a much better understanding now of how CEAT is doing, what challenges they face, what their goals are, and how they're shaping the future of the tire industry. But remember, this is just the beginning. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep those wheels turning.